Welcome to Horns Up. I'm Peter.
And I'm Animesh.
And I'm super chuffed about this one because it's Psycroptic time on Horns Up. So huge welcome to Jason and welcome to Horns Up. Or should I just say, g'day, mate?
Cheers. How you going?
It's going good.
Good. So, I have to do a bit of a backstory on this episode because I'm really glad that we finally got Psycroptic on the podcast and we're talking to you. Because for those who probably remember this, some may not, back when we started the podcast in 2018, all the way in our first episode, towards the end, we were doing Animesh and I recommendations of what we were listening to. And my pick, well, I'm taking credit for it because it's true. Those who don't believe me, go listen back to that episode. Yep. Was actually your last release as The Kingdom Drowns.
And, nice.
4 years later, here we are, just weeks away from the release of your 8th album, Divine Counsel, which is actually going to be out on the 5th of August via Prosthetic Records. How does it feel?
Good. It's nice to actually be getting or feeling like something's starting to happen again after such a long hiatus with COVID. So we're starting to slowly do a few shows again now, and we're all really excited for the release.
Yeah, it's crazy when I think about it because, like, I talked about the 4 years, but then I realized it's been that long since a Psycroptic album. One of the first things actually which confused me because, like, when the single came out, there was not that much information about the album. But then once y'all kind of announced the album, one of the first things I noticed was actually on this album, you've only written the lyrics and done the vocal patterns, where you've got the origin vocalist, Jason Kaiser, to actually contribute vocals. Now, to some of us...
There's a bit of confusion there.
Okay. Clear it up
for us.
Yeah. So I've been asked this one a couple of times. A couple of the websites and stuff got things wrong. So I wrote all the vocals and lyrics and everything. I did perform on the album, but we got Jason Kaiser from Origin was doing backing vocals on the whole album as well.
Okay.
So I am actually on the whole album.
Fair enough, because I was this is a really strange arrangement.
Yeah, a lot of people got a bit confused by it, and I think a lot of journalists just got their wires crossed when they were reading the press pack. So yeah, I am on the album, but we've got Jason from Origins in there as well. So he's back before COVID was a thing. He would do live shows and stuff when I couldn't do them because I run a business and have a couple of kids and stuff. So every now and again there'd be tours that had come up that I just wouldn't be able to do. So Kaiser would go out and fill in for me. So it kind of got to the point where we just thought, you know what, let's get him doing backings on the album. So it's kind of a thing, I mean, he's always been a really close friend of all of us in the band. So we just thought, you know what, we're at the point in our career where let's just throw him in the mix, and our voices work well together. So we're just running with it for now anyway.
Alrighty. Just as a follow-up and perhaps more as a tease, I think this is a great way to filter out the true super fans versus the casual listener. just like how Iron Maiden, like, it's a true super fan who can detect whose solo it actually is.
Yeah.
on this album, whose voice is that actually?
Yeah, that's right. No, it's funny how it all worked, and because when I first started seeing all the press coming out for the album and after the single rolled out, I was like, oh man, the way that a lot of the journalists have written that, I thought they're going to think I'm not in the band anymore.
Yeah, like it was so weird for me, right? And especially, like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, you're sitting in Australia, writing all these lyrics, doing all of this, and how do you kind of tell Jason all the other way in this case that this is how it's supposed to be sung? No.
No, it's a funny one because I was actually at work and my wife sent me a text message, and she's like, "What the fuck? I'm reading all these articles and they're making out like you're not in the band anymore." I was just like, "Oh, yeah, I better try and clear some of this up." So it was kind of a funny one, but you know, people will see soon enough. And the funny thing was when with one of the articles I read about it, and it had a band photo underneath the article, which had a picture of me front and center, and then the film clip, which starts with a shot of me. And I thought, oh, people are going to get really fucking confused by this.
Oh, well, he is on the album, guys. You heard it here.
Yeah.
From the man himself.
That's right.
Alrighty. Now,
clear it all up.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that's clear. So, in a previous interview, you've said, and I quote, "With me personally, the lyrics for all that shit, it's just my views on the world, basically. There's no mythical themes. They're not probably the most direct." Was that the same approach that you took towards Divine Council?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just, I mean, I've been working with Psycroptic and writing with them for so long now. I think it's just become the way I write. Look at what's going on around the world and take my view and opinion on it. And, you know, I try to always write everything so that it's open to interpretation for the listener or the reader or whatever. So, you know, people might pick up on what I'm actually singing about, or they might take their own meaning from it. So, and that's the way I've always, you know, when I'm sort of reading through lyrics and stuff, that's the sort of stuff I've always liked. So yeah, it's nice way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and you know, we're lucky we've got a copy of the album in advance, right? And like the opening track was something that I was like, okay, these guys are up to something. But for me, honestly, the standout track was of the album so far, just putting it out there so far before anyone says, is actually Enslavement. And I really love, like, a little over a minute and a half into the track, I'm assuming that's the chorus part. Again, with metal, you're not sure about the chorus. I just love how, like, the whole, because now that you added that context that it's Jason doing the backing vocals, right? Just how it's kind of layered, and it just kind of keeps coming back in the track. So that is you and Jason. Tell me about, like, coming up with that part, because again, that's very different, right? And when you put it into the context of death metal or even like technical death metal. Yeah,
I mean, we did get a bit experimental with stuff on this album, with especially in Enslavement, the orchestration and stuff. That's in a lot of it. So the writing the parts between me and Jason, I had it in my head when I was writing it and working with the song, sort of where I wanted him to sing. But when it actually came down to it, me and Joe decided we'd get Jason to, basically, I sung the whole album, and then we got Jason to sing the whole album, basically copying what I was doing.
Oh, wow.
And then me and Joe actually took to the studio and cut it all up and pieced it all together in the studio. So, yeah, we were originally going to try and, you know, just do the bits that were written and stuff. But being on the other side of the world from each other, it was kind of going to get a bit confusing and complex on how to actually explain to him what I wanted him to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, via email or FaceTime or whatever. So in the end, we thought, nah, it's just going to be easy. I'll sing the whole album, then we'll get Jason to sing the whole album, and we'll chop it all together in the studio how we want it. But also doing it that way, sort of, it gave us a lot of extra options as well. So, you know, a lot of things where I mightn't have thought, oh, we'll layer us up here or whatever. When we were going through cutting it all up, we had the option to go, oh, I wonder what this will sound like if we put both of us in here, or just have Jason here instead of me, or whatever. So we did spend quite a bit of time cutting it all together, which it was a fun process to do because we did have so many options to play with. And we actually also had Joe's wife, Amy, actually provided some of the like choir operatic vocals for the choruses as well. So some of those choruses, it's got 3 vocalists and like an insane amount of tracks going on. I mean, you can hear it in ones like Exodus and Enslavement. Some of the choruses just get so big and layered up with vocals because there might be like 10 tracks of Amy doing all different choir harmonies, and then a couple of tracks of me and a couple of tracks of Kaiser, and we just thought, fuck it, let's just go all out and let's get epic in some parts. Let's have some real fun with it.
Did you guys by any chance, and this is just because I'm a huge Slayer fan, there's the song on Seasons in the Abyss, I think it's called Temptation, where in the studio, I don't know if you know this story. So Tom Araya laid down one set of vocals, and then the producer, I think it was Rick Rubin at that time, he asked Kerry King to lay down another set of vocals. And there are 2 vocal lines, and by mistake or on accident or on purpose, that we'll never know. But
they ended up on it.
He played them both together, and it ended up sounding great because it basically, they played it off as, oh my God, this is Satan doing backing vocals.
Yeah, I think we've got a bit of that stuff going on.
Okay, but yours was more calculated, right? This wasn't an accident. It was planned.
No, ours had a lot of work put into it. Very intentional.
All right, like talking about Enslavement, like to me, that song kicked off the second part of the album as such, because I found that the bunch of songs that followed Enslavement, Ashes of Our Empire, The Prophet's Counsel, and even Awakening for that matter, all have a sort of different vibe when compared to the bookends, the front and the end part of the album as such. Because yes, you mentioned the ambient orchestration and instrumentation. I felt that these bunch of songs, Enslavement onwards, they're just far more chuggier and fatter rather than thin or acerbic as such. They just feel meatier. And the one word that I had in my head to describe these songs as compared to the rest of the album, they just feel a lot more epic.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that what you guys were going for? And why the need for this kind of tonal shift as such? Was that just a natural process of songwriting?
I think, Joe's always leaned towards sort of having a few of those more, I suppose, atmospheric, epic sort of songs on albums. I mean, on the last album we had Upon These Stones, which was kind of along that same sort of thing as like Awakening is, and Prophet's Counsel and stuff. So I think we, more than anything, Joe just kind of wrote a couple more of those sort of style of songs for this album. I mean, they've always been ones that the members of the band, we've always really liked those sort of things, really sort of bass heavy and lots of atmospheric synth and stuff like that going on. So I think we just, on this album, it just sort of naturally pushed a little bit further that way as well. But yeah, I mean, we still obviously wanted to keep sort of the faster, more sort of up-tempo stuff. But yeah, we do like experimenting with that sort of more slowed down, stripped back atmospheric stuff as well.
Yeah. And, I know you mentioned that Joe kind of writes the music and stuff like that, but I just want to understand the entire kind of process, right? Because personally, one of the things I enjoy about Psycroptic is, it's all about the riffs at the end of the day also, right? And,
Definitely.
No matter how technical or fast the track is in there, if you have to kind of break down the tracks, and that's the kind of thing I end up doing sometimes, is you'll always find like one catchy riff in there, which kind of over multiple listens just gets kind of stuck in your head.
Yeah.
So you're aware of what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're all the members of the band, like me, Dave, and Todd. We're always, when Joe sends out the demos for what he's starting to work on for a new album, that's the thing that we're always like, fuck, how does he pull these riffs out? They're always just so perfect, you know.
Yeah,
and that's the thing with us. It's always been about the riff, about what Joe Haley's doing, and the rest of us are just there to complement it. Really.
fair enough. Because I was just trying to understand, right? Like, is this like a very conscious thing? Because over a period of time, you kind of a pattern kind of emerges, and I totally understand. I mean, like when you've got someone like that doing his thing, why kind of mess with it, right?
Why fuck with the formula?
but I have to ask at that moment then, like compared to what he sends you as like an initial idea or so, is there times where things dramatically change, or is it just like?
No, there is quite a lot of shift between the demo process and what ends up being the finished product, because a lot of the time, like the demos that we get sent, a lot of the riffs will be, you know, solid. That's what it is, and that's how it's going to go. But a lot of the time, he mightn't have that perfect riff yet, so he's sort of he'll just put something in the demo that's, you know, the tempo and the sort of feel that he wants in there, but then, you know, the riff it'll get written, you know, further through the process when he decides what he wants definitely in there. So there is a bit of chopping and changing, but I suppose the feel and the vibe of a song is generally there from, you know, when the demo gets sent out to the other members.
So, you know, we've talked so much about Divine Council. Let's play a track from it. And which one would you like us to play and why?
Exodus.
I think you didn't even need to think about it, huh?
No, that's I think that's my favorite track off the album, and it was the one that really stood out to me when all the demos got sent through, and when I first listened to it, and I thought that whole song is basically one giant chorus with a few other killer riffs in between. And I think, yeah, that was the one that I think I was the most proud of, like lyrically, vocally, the way we built up the choruses with all the vocal layers and stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably the standout track on the album for me.
All right. So there you have it from the man himself, the standout track. Here it is, Exodus.
Alrighty, so we noticed that this is your third album with the same lineup. Did that have an impact on the creation process or the songwriting process, the international remote working, whatever you call it? You have a steady rhythm, you guys all know what you're doing, you
Yeah,
guys know what the expectations are. Is it just
yeah.
easier to create?
I mean, I think the writing process, it hasn't changed since the original lineup that we had with when we had Cameron in the band playing bass. I mean, generally Joe's been the main songwriter the whole time, and nothing's changed with that. So it's basically Joe doing all the music, me doing all the vocals, and Dave doing drums. So I suppose the core of the band, like the writing and studio process, hasn't changed for a long time. Well, since I joined the band, really. So, yeah, to answer your question, I suppose nothing's really changed from the lineup change. So,
And one of the things actually also, at least on this album, I'm not sure about the previous ones, is it was recorded across 3 different studios across Australia and North America. And like when I'm just trying to think about it, right, just to have everything in sync, you just need to have like a good kind of roadmap, or in this case, like pre-production. So like how does it kind of go once the demos are done, you've got everything else? Is it that, you know what, it's studio, record in and out, or at that point there's some kind of changes that kind of come in while you're in the studio itself? I mean, like, I love the example you gave of the vocals that y'all thought of.
Yeah, well, I mean, sort of, yeah, I mean, Joe, once all the demos were done and everyone sort of wrote all their parts to it, and then it came to Joe starting to actually track the guitars properly. And then as Joe was finishing all the actual proper guitars, that'd get sent to Dave in Melbourne, and he'd work in his studio. And so Dave's drum parts would change a fair bit from what the demo was. Like Dave might hear a bit of a riff needing a different type of groove or a different feel, so things would get changed a little bit. The vocals, I suppose they got changed a fair bit between the demo stage and the finished product, simply because I had 2 other vocalists that I was working with as well. So, you start to, get different ideas when you start throwing extras into the mix. But yeah, it was, I mean, me and Joe were working in the studio together, and Amy as well. So that was easy. Dave used to always record with Joe, which he couldn't this time because he couldn't come to Tasmania due to COVID. But then, yeah, and it was actually 4 studios. So,
wow.
So there was me, Joe, and Amy working in Joe's studio because Joe's an engineer. Dave was working in a studio in Melbourne, and then we had Todd in one studio in New Jersey, and then we had Kaiser in another studio in New York. So it was a lot of shit for Joe to piece back together when it all came through. So there was a lot of Joe sending files through and receiving files and then putting everything back together on Pro Tools. And so it wasn't too much of a pain in the ass for me, but for Joe actually recording and putting everything together and mixing, it was probably fairly challenging.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if someone got the labeling wrong of the files. That's just like...
no. There was, I think, like, Joe's...
Animesh knows the pain. He's shaking his head. Like the last thing you want.
It was all pretty organized. I think the biggest thing with it was people actually, because so much shit going on with COVID and different restrictions, people actually being able to get studio time when they needed it. I think that was kind of a hard thing because studios, some of them would have been shut down, and the ones that were available, you probably had so many people trying to get into these studios to do their tracking and stuff. Trying to actually get a booking to work in a studio, I think was something that they did struggle a little bit with. I was lucky because I was just working with Joe, so it was just basically a matter of I'd ring Joe and say, yep, I'm coming up this week. I'll be up here these nights, and we'd get stuck into it. So I had it easy. I basically had access to a studio whenever I needed it.
That's the, I think, peak like you want to reach, right? I think Joe's kind of got it all sorted out. He's pretty smart that way.
Yeah, I mean, during the whole COVID thing, when we were stuck at home, I mean, I did a lot of studio work, like not just with Psycroptic. Me and Joe have another death metal project going called Domination Campaign. I did a few other session jobs and stuff like that. So through that couple of years when we couldn't tour, I was pretty much in the studio at least once a week with Joe. Just non-stop writing and recording, basically, which it was a nice change of pace, I suppose, because we'd been so used to being on the road, you know, all the time, and then to being stuck at home and thinking, oh, well, might as well get creative and spend some time in the studio, which, like, the studio time was kind of always it used to always sort of be the job, like the job side of being in the band, you know, like the touring was the reward, the time spent in the studio was I suppose you'd say, the task of it, you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of shifted, where I do enjoy the writing and recording process a lot more than I used to now too, which is really nice.
Since you brought up COVID, and since we've talked about it quite a lot and you've referenced it a lot, is it fair to call this album Psycroptic's lockdown album of sorts? Because there just seems to be the fact that that time, the last 2 years as such, is the birthing time for most of the music that's being released today, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that music is being marketed as that fact too.
Yeah,
This
is definitely our COVID album. So we finished this album, I think it was about August or September last year. So yeah, it was pretty much right in the thick of, I mean, Dave lives in Melbourne, and I mean, I think Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. So this was all recorded it was finished when Dave wasn't even allowed to leave the house at all. So we didn't have a lot of it down here in Tasmania, you know. Everything was pretty, like, day-to-day life didn't change a lot, except we just couldn't leave the island, which I mean, it wasn't the ideal situation. It was a lot easier than what majority of the world had though. So, but yeah, definitely this would be, you'd call it our COVID album.
I noticed that you've got an album launch show planned in Melbourne next month. Do you have any more shows or anything else planned? What's next for the band?
We've got a few shows booked for Australia. We're hoping to maybe get overseas late in the year if things goes to plan. So that's all a little bit up in the air at the moment, but we're sort of hoping that after the album's released, we can get out overseas maybe late this year, and then we're sort of hoping that next year things will start kicking off and getting some sort of normality back into the music world again, with any luck.
Okay, which kind of ties into my next question. And I was kind of hoping we bring this up at some point, but I was actually at the Psycroptic tour in 2017 in India, where you played. I was at the Pune show, and you missed out. Now I understood why in there. So not to put you on the spot, but when can we expect to see you here with the band next?
I have no idea, to be honest. hopefully not too far off. I mean, we're all at the point where we're just eager to get out and get going again properly. So I'd say next year we're going to probably start really getting back into it again. So I don't know, hopefully next year, maybe early year after.
Yeah,
Time will tell.
The thing is, if you have to fly to Europe or America, you have to kind of fly over India. Just saying.
Yeah, we're starting to sort of look at places we can go on the way to the major market tours and stuff like that. We ended up doing we did Dubai a few years ago. That was sort of en route to Europe and stuff. So yeah, we are sort of looking at a bit more of that sort of thing as well. So fingers crossed we might get out there again, or first time for me.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jason. And especially thanks for taking time out of your lunch. I mean, really appreciate it.
No, not a drama. My pleasure.
So that was Jason from Psycroptic. You guys can check out their 8th studio album, Divine Council, that'll release on August 5th via Prosthetic Records. And once you've done that, come back and tell us what you felt about it. You can do that on hornsupod.com or on Twitter at hornsupod. I'm on Twitter at Asmawani.
I'm at Trent Crusher.
And this was Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.
Cheers.